Hello and welcome to NJ.com's live TV chat with Vicki Hyman. Today we'll be talking about the mid-season finale of AMC's The Walking Dead, the new Bravo dramedy, The Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, and we'll also get Vicki's thoughts on NBC's second live production, Peter Pan. All right, so we're going to get the most timely one out of the way first. Vicki, how are you?
I'm a little under the weather.
All right, well, hopefully we'll muster through this. Peter Pan, fresh off the heels of last year's wildly popular Sound of Music, Peter Pan attempted to snag some of the same magic, but from what I understand, it didn't ratings-wise. What do you have to say about that?
Well, the ratings were about half of what Sound of Music is, and when I was watching the show last night, I kept thinking, is this a bad production of a decent musical, or is this a bad production of a bad musical, or a decent production of a bad musical? And I really think that maybe Peter Pan the actual musical itself has something to do with it. It's just not as popular as Sound of Music. The music isn't as memorable. I did not like the production at all, don't get me wrong, and I hate to slam Peter Pan, but I just don't think it has the same cachet as the Sound of Music. So I think that might have been part of the reason why the ratings were about half of what Sound of Music was.
And it didn't have Vampire Bill.
It did not have Vampire Bill, but it had Christopher Walken, who's practically a vampire. So
we're going to get to that in a second, but I watched I think the first hour and a half. It was dreadfully long. But that aside, I think the sets were beautiful. And let's talk cast for a second. I mean, what did you think of Allison Williams?
She has a lovely singing voice, much better than she has as Marnie on Girls. She has blindingly white teeth. I mean, she was fine. She was not particularly distracting. She was not particularly great. She was very game. I will give her that. I thought that the flying was a little weird, especially in the beginning where she seemed to be flying across the nursery and almost slamming into the wall but stopping herself. So that might have been a technical glitch, but it wasn't as, and I could see the wires. I shouldn't be able to see the wires. Maybe I'm nitpicking here. But it didn't come across as magical to me, if we're going to go back to that word.
Well, I mean, she gave it the old college try, and she can't be faulted, I don't think. I want to talk to you about this live musical trend. I mean, is this, do you think, a fad? Is it here to stay? I kind of like the idea of watching something live, something elaborate, something planned. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, we have one more coming up. I think maybe Fox is doing Grease next year.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly people are interested in trying it out, but after they got 9 million viewers last night. That's nothing to sneeze at, but it was not as successful as the 18 million that Sound of Music got. So I think it's probably a trend. These are pretty expensive to mount. And I think unless you get the perfect storm of casting and musical, it's going to be like it was last night, which is kind of painful to watch and very, very long.
Well, all right. Now that brings us to Christopher Walken, who played the iconic Captain Hook. Myself, I kept getting distracted by the fact that he was Christopher Walken playing Captain Hook. What were your impressions?
Well, it's funny because I think when he first started out, at the beginning of the show, he was really trying to put on a certain type of accent and tone down his innate Walkenness. But there was one line where he started off as Captain Hook, and 3 or 4 words later, he ended up as Christopher Walken, and he even had this little sort of walk about him that looked like that to make me think that's Christopher Walken, that's not Captain Hook. And then he does not have a strong singing voice. There was this one moment where they went to an aerial shot. It was at the end of one of the songs. I can't remember which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
But all the pirates were on their backs in a circle around him, kicking up their feet in the air, and he's pretending to belt out this major, major note, and obviously it's not him because his mouth is moving in different ways than this person just belting out this very pure note. It was just ridiculous to watch, and by the end, he seemed not to care so much anymore. He was just like, okay, another half an hour, okay, fine.
Well, what I love about these kinds of productions is that they harken back to the old golden age of television where, you'd have live teleplays akin to the Hallmark Hall of Fame, Playhouse 90, Kraft Television Theater, and I want to remind everyone, someone named Rod Serling came out of all that, and I'd love to see more live events like that on TV. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2000, we saw a Sidney Lumet live play, Failsafe, which
That's right.
George Clooney was in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's something here.
Maybe plays and not musicals?
Maybe plays and not musicals. Maybe.
I think one of the weird things about this musical was that there were long stretches of dialogue, and you know, when you're in a musical, there's often a score playing in the background, there's music, and there was just like sort of this empty white space behind the dialogue, and you're just very aware that you're watching this production, and it's kind of awkward to watch at certain points too. It was just kind of like, I'm like, something should be happening here. Why isn't it happening?
Well,
and when it's all like that, it's all dialogue, you wouldn't get the same feeling.
You know, if anything, I learned one thing last night. I didn't know Tinkerbell was such a jerk.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because you have Tinkerbell, Wendy, and Tiger Lily all fighting over Peter Pan, and Peter Pan does not seem to be such a prize, if you ask me.
On that note, let's move it to Bravo's first scripted program, The Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, starring New Jersey's Lisa Edelstein. Vicki, explain what this whole show is about for the cheap seats.
Well, Lisa Edelstein plays Abby McCarthy, who is a self-help guru who writes these advice books called A Girl's Guide to, you know, blah, blah, blah. They're based on Vicki Iovine's very popular series that started, I think, with Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy. So she has this image as this person who knows how to, you know, she's got a great life, she's got a great husband, she's got 2 kids, but in reality, her marriage is falling apart for various reasons, and she's trying to keep up this facade for her children and also for her brand because it doesn't look good if the Girlfriend's Guide guru is getting divorced. But early in the first episode, she finds out that her husband, who they've agreed to sort of a temporary split, he started seeing a CW starlet who is, you know, probably 20 years, at least 20 years younger than they are, which throws her into a rage, and she sort of has this public meltdown, and so we go on from there. And she's got to pick up the pieces. Her empire is in ruins, and she gets through it with with her titular girlfriends. Janine Garofalo, who's also from New Jersey, plays one of them.
So what were your impressions? How did you feel? Did you like it?
I did like it. I mean, I didn't come in with any particular expectations. I was really amazed by how well it fit in with this whole Bravo Real Housewives aesthetic, shall we say. So you have women who are wearing fabulous clothes and lead sort of fabulous lives, and they have these dramatic things happen to them, but it's written by actual writers. There's an actual script. There's characterization. There's plots that are thought about. Well, not that in the Real Housewives they don't think about their plots too, but it's professionally and admittedly done. So I did appreciate the production values were great. The cast was great. It's a little, you know, it's a little aspirational. I mean, they have like the best clothes, the most beautiful apartment you're seeing right here, the house. With these, you know, gorgeous views over the Hollywood Hills. Just and there's that.
Yes, lots of that.
So I actually really enjoyed it. I'm going to keep watching it.
Yeah, you know, I watched the pilot. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to get to the second one. You gave me the screener. You know, but watching it, I couldn't help but notice this new trend in TV and, you know, movies too, for that matter, where we're seeing the flip side to the cheerful modern family. We're seeing many more embittered relationship shows like FX's Married, You're the Worst, and like now this. Is this kind of like just a sign of the times?
Well, I think it is a sign of the times, but now this is not a broadcast show, and most of the shows you mentioned were not broadcast, but I think we've seen that like a lot of your typical family comedies, you know, relationship shows don't work really well, and what seems to be making a splash these days and getting a lot of chatter behind it, which is very important these days, is this sort of edgy, angry, dark shows that are, you know, there's a mixture of drama, there's a mixture of comedy and drama. On Netflix, Orange is the New Black is doing real well. Is that a comedy? Is that a drama? There's dark moments, there's really funny moments, and I think that we seem to be going in that direction. I don't know if relationships are always going to be the basis for that. But I think the dramedies is a category that seems to be here to stay. That actually they did one this year on with the Deborah Messing show. I can't remember what it's called. I'm trying to erase it from my mind, but it's apparently doing very well, the cop show that she stars in. And that's a dramedy that does not work at all. They have not gotten the right tone, and that's the really tricky part about these things. You got to get the right balance. And on Girlfriend's Guide, I think they absolutely have the right balance.
So it's kind of the perfect balance between comedy and drama. You wouldn't say dramatic or more comedic. There's a good balance here.
Well, I think that in terms of impact, it's very balanced. I think it's much there are a lot more jokes than there are dramatic moments, but the dramatic moments tend to be the ones that stick with you a lot. And there's a couple of moments between Abby and her husband Jake, Lisa Edelstein and Paul Edelstein, no relation, that, you know, at first you think, you know, he's kind of just a jerk, he's, you know, cheating on her, he's not really cheating on her. You realize they're both at fault. They both kind of want to make it work. They both don't want to make it work. They're both, I mean, they're just very ambivalent, and I think that is something we don't see very much. It's usually just like the woman's scorned and, you know, they're getting a divorce, or they all make it work together in the end. And this is his middle ground that's, I think, really interesting.
Right. I like it. I think I'm going to stick with it, too. And this may be a blasphemous question, but is this Sex in the City, or should I say a Sex in the City of Angels for a new age?
Well, I mean, a Sex in the City, as I think I said in my review, the later years. I mean, this is not the, I mean, they have kids. They you know, they're trying to, you know, make their marriages work, and the women on Sex in the City, except for Miranda, I think really didn't make it that far. Right. Charlotte, I guess, yes, she made it that far. She was working on the kids too. But yeah, I mean, it's got the comedic part has the same vibe. It's got probably, you know, the same level of risque in its jokes, because Sex and the City was kind of ahead of its time for that.
Sure. Sure. All right, so moving on, The Walking Dead. I'm going to start out our conversation by saying, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the mid-season finale, press pause, go watch it. Why haven't you watched it? Then come back and press play. Okay, so we spent the entire season trying to find Beth. She was holed up in a hospital run by Dawn, the insecure dictator of sorts, who ruled with an aluminum fist. Tell me, why wasn't I that sad when Dawn shot Beth?
She you know, it's like you kind of knew that was going to happen. You knew somebody was going to die, and you knew they weren't going to kill off Daryl. They're not going to kill off Rick, and God help them if they killed off Carol, because I would be in Los Angeles right now just, you know, on a rampage. I love Carol so much. It wasn't going to happen. So it's like you're looking at it like, what's going to happen? Beth, she's been sort of a minor character throughout. I don't think that they really built her up enough in the hospital. I mean, they gave her this plot line. It just seemed like, I don't know, it was like a plot line that sort of went nowhere. It's another one of these, like, they take a break, they find the autocrat has something that they want, they have to defeat the autocrat, and then, you know, it's over, and they move on. And I just wish that there could be different kinds of stories that they're telling on this show rather than the same one over and over again. So Beth was like, you know, she was a sacrificial lamb. You know, everybody was so sad when it happened. Well, to me, I mean, like, in this world, when Beth disappeared, I kind of wrote her off. I mean, or I would have if I was the survivor. Well, she got kidnapped. You're in the, you know, huge metropolitan area of Atlanta. You're never going to see her again. Moving on. Maggie seemed to have moved on. So it was really sad.
Maggie really moved on. And so when I saw her break down, you weren't really concerned about your sister.
Well, I think she was. I mean, obviously, you know, she thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to get my sister back," and then she dies. So, you know, I understand that emotion, but I don't know. It's so many people have died on this show. It didn't really. This one didn't mean that much to me. I'm cold-hearted. I've got this little black shriveled heart.
Right.
You know, whatever. It did not move me.
I think you bring up a good point that I think at least I might be getting some Walking Dead fatigue. I mean, we're seeing, like you said, the variation of the same theme over and over. You know, a lot of people hated the farm arc. I personally didn't, because it allowed the show to breathe a little bit. You know, are there benefits of keeping them in one place versus having them constantly on the road, constantly holding up? And I know this is an apocalypse, but oh my God, I just want to breathe a little bit.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think that when they are together, when they are on the farm, it allows for a lot more character development. When you're on the road, there's a lot more action going on, and people don't have time to sit there and sort of relate to each other, and they're in a stable place where they can sort of like, you know, when you make a new life together, when you start the civilization, then, you know, you allow for more development between the characters, a greater relationship to form. This is like, it's just very adrenaline fueled.
Right.
I really just want them to get out of Atlanta already. I mean, I was happy to actually see them in Atlanta because I'm sick of the Georgia woods.
Right.
So they're in Atlanta. I think being in a city allows for more interesting things to happen. I would like them to try to, I don't know, create their own civilization on the 20th story of one of those skyscrapers they were in with the beautiful couch and the nice art. And it's like, why don't you try that for a while? Or just leave Atlanta. And I know that they are going to be leaving Atlanta. They're going to be heading north. So I'm hopeful for that.
Right.
I thought the season started off really, really strong. I loved the fact that they were at Terminus, and I thought they were going to get bogged down in Terminus for like most of the season. And they were just like, they made quick work of Terminus, and they moved on, and they did it in a really fantastic way. There was a lot of emotional payoff at the end in the church when they got back with the people who lived at Terminus, the cannibals. And then this whole Beth thing just didn't really interest me very much.
Well, hopefully moving on, for me, for the next, not season, but the next mid-season, I should say, I'm hoping that the narrative isn't disjointed like it is. We spoke about this a lot where, they would go 3 episodes and, you're wanting to know what happened 3 episodes back. I don't like when people play with time in any kind of form if it's for nothing. And I felt this year, The Walking Dead, it was for nothing.
I mean, I love it when people play with time, but there's usually a reason behind that. And now, like for example, the episode where it was all Carol-centric, and she was first back, I think, seeing the smoke rising over the prison, and then she saw she's going back, and then you saw her return. I think that episode to the women's shelter where she I guess stayed for a little while with her daughter, and it was like it didn't really give you any backstory on the character. It didn't give you any insight into Carol. It just did nothing. So I didn't need to see that one.
I agree, and here's hoping in the next mid-season we'll see more of Morgan.
Yeah, well, he showed up at the very, very end, and I was very excited to see that. Although, again, Anthony, how do these people find each other in the entirety of northwestern Georgia? Morgan came from Kentucky. It's like 5 hours away. There's no way he would find him. These are the things that keep me up at night.
Vicki, if we went to the Garden State Plaza right now and you were on the other side of the mall, I couldn't find you. Okay? So, all right. On that note, thank you, Vicki. I know you're under the weather. Catch us next Friday for our next TV chat. Vicki, say goodbye.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.